Hare Krishna. Sense pleasure is not imaginary, but it is a product of imagination. Imaginary is the word we use to describe something that doesn't exist, something that just is fantastical. So, for example, we may say Santa Claus is imaginary. Now, sense pleasure is not imaginary in the sense that it is not that it doesn't exist. When the senses come in contact with the sense objects, we do experience some pleasure. When we taste something delicious, we do feel some pleasure. So in that sense, sense pleasure is not imaginary. Yet, it is a product of imagination. In the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna urges Arjuna to give up all pleasures, worldly pleasures that are products of the mind's action, which is imagination. So he says that when Arjuna asks Krishna about the characteristics of an enlightened person, so Krishna replies, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha mano-gataan atmanyevatmana tushta sthita prajnastadochyate. So he says, Prajahati yada kaman, Prajahati, giving up, kaman, material desires, sarvan partha mano-gataan, all partha mano-gataan, all of which are product of mano-gataan, the movement of the mind. Now, what is the movement of the mind? Now, we think of a product of imagination when we use the word. We often use it to say that it is a product of something that is produced by the mind is a product of imagination. But product of imagination does not necessarily mean that it is imaginary, but it is, in this case of sense pleasure, it is exaggerated. So, the pleasure is there, but it is very fleeting. It is, the Bhagavatam refers to that tucham, insignificant, madhulavai, just a mere drop, a fraction of a drop actually. But when our mind gets caught with the craving for the pleasure, then the mind, by its imagination, magnifies the pleasure, so that which is insignificant seems irresistible, and we feel that I can't live without it, and for its sake I am ready to give up anything and everything. But actually, no matter how much the sensory pleasure is glamorized by our mind's imagination, or nowadays the whole media is involving people's imagination, and people's imagination glamorizes the pleasure. But no matter who glamorizes how much, it remains a tiny pleasure. And it is the quantity of the pleasure, the intensity of the pleasure, the irresistibility of the pleasure, all of these are products of imagination. And although there is a little pleasure that can never satisfy our heart, just as a drop of water cannot quench thirst in a desert. So that's why scriptures tell us not to get distracted towards these pleasures. And Krishna also says, knowing that whenever the pleasure seems irresistible, whenever you feel a craving for the pleasure, know that is because of mano-gataan. It is a product of the mind. And turn away from it. And then does that mean we have to live without pleasure? No. Just as the point is not that if our throat is parched in a desert, we should stay without water. But we should know that a drop of water is not going to satisfy us. So if we are here, and if on this side we have a drop of water, and on this side we have an oasis. So if we go away from the oasis because of the hope of the drop, thinking that the drop is a lake, we are cheating ourselves. But if we just keep the drop away and keep moving towards the oasis, then we can get our thirst fully quenched. So similarly, the second half of this verse states, Atmanyevatmana tushta sthita prajnastadochyate. Atmanyevatmana. So when we turn our consciousness towards the soul and we seek happiness at the spiritual level, then tushtaha, we become satisfied. So we become satisfied by delighting in the spiritual level. The highest happiness at the spiritual level is in devotion to Krishna, in devotional remembrance of Krishna. So when we strive to remember Krishna, then we experience the supreme happiness, and by the experience of the happiness, we are able to resist more and more the temptations for worldly happiness. But while we are in the process of experiencing that happiness, we are pursuing to going towards that happiness, like we are moving towards the lake, but we should not keep looking back at what is a drop, imagining that to be a lake. So we can meditate whenever our mind starts tempting us with sensory sensual pleasures, that although there is some pleasure, its quantity, its intensity and its irresistibility are all a product of imagination, and therefore we had better stay away from it and move towards real spiritual pleasure by purification coming from the practice of Bhakti Yoga. Then our longing for happiness will be perennially and perfectly fulfilled when we realize Krishna and when we learn to love Krishna.